Hello friends, welcome back to CSharp.net online training video series. Today we are going to discuss two important concepts, shield class and shield methods in C# with examples. What we are going to discuss in today's session. Today we are going to discuss what are shield classes, what are shield methods, when and how to use shield classes and shield methods with one real-time example. We will also discuss the rules and regulations that we need to follow while working with shield class and shield methods. Let's start today's discussion. So what is shield class? See, a class from which it is not possible to create or derive a new class is known as a shield class. In simple word, we can say that the class that is declared using the shield modifier is known as shield class, and a shield class cannot be inherited by any other classes, right? To make any class a shield class, we need to use the keyword shield. The keyword shield explicitly tells the compiler that this class is a shield and therefore this class cannot be extended. Cannot be extended means no class can be derived from the shield class. For better understanding, please have a look at this example, right? So here I'm creating class 1 as the shield class. And if you see while I'm making the inheritance relationship, right? So now I'm trying to create this class 2 as a derived class of class 1, or you can say I'm trying to make this class 2 as a child class of class 1. Then at that time I'm getting compilation error. What compiler saying? The compiler saying class 2 cannot derive from the shield type class 1. So what it means? It means once you make a class as shield, then no further inheritance. That is going to be the final class. No class can derive from that class, right? So that class cannot become a parent class. That class cannot become a base class, right? So that's what you need to understand. No inheritance, no further inheritance once you make the class as shield, right? So while working with a shield class, we need to remember few pointers, right? For few points we need to remember. What are the points? A shield class is completely the opposite of an abstract class. What it means? We already discussed in abstract class video that abstract class means it might be contain some abstract method and a non-abstract method, right? And you cannot create an instance of an abstract class. The child class is going to provide the implementation of all the abstract member of the parent class. What it means? It means if we are creating abstract class means child class should be there. Or if child class is not there, then there is no use of an abstract class, right? And coming to the shield class, it is just opposite of the abstract class, means child class is not required. You cannot create a derived class from the shield class. Shield class means this is the final class, right? The shield class cannot contain any abstract method. See, as this class cannot be derived to any other classes, as you cannot create any child class of shield class, then if you declare some abstract method inside the shield class, then who is going to provide the implementation, right? Because there is no child class. As there is no child class, then who is going to provide the implementation of the abstract method if you declared inside the shield class? Then no one can provide, na. So this is the reason why shield class cannot contain any abstract methods in it. It should be the bottommost class within the inheritance series, so, right? So if you are designing the class, so first you need to create the interface, then you need to create the abstract class, then you need to create the normal concrete classes, then you need to create the shield class. And once you make the class as a shield, no further inheritance. That means what? It is the bottommost class in the inheritance hierarchy, right? Who is the top class? Top is the inheritance, right? After interface, then we will declare abstract class. After abstract class, then we can declare concrete class. After concrete class, then we can create shield class. And once you make shield class, there is no further inheritance, right? Interface is the topmost in the inheritance hierarchy, and shield class is the bottommost in the inheritance hierarchy, right? A shield class can never be used as a base class. So base class means what? Parent class, super class. So the super class or the parent class, we also term them as the base class. So in this case, if you look at this example, class 1, and here we are trying to derive class 2 from class 1, right? And this is not possible because this class 1 is marked as shield. As this class is marked as shield, then no inheritance possible means you can never make this class 1 as the parent class of any other classes. You cannot do this. This is the reason why a shield class can never be used as a base class, or you can say as a parent class. The shield class is specifically used to avoid further inheritance, right? So once you make the class as a shield, no more inheritance, right? The shield keyword can be used with classes, instance methods, and properties. In this example, we are using the shield keyword with class, right? Here you can see I'm making this class as a shield by using the shield keyword. Not only you can use this shield keyword with class, but you can also use the shield keyword with the class members like instance methods. You can also use the shield keyword with properties, right? As once you progress in this video, then we will see how to use the shield keyword with how to use this shield keyword with methods, how to use this shield keyword with properties. Those things we will discuss as we progress in this video. So the point that you need to remember, if even if a shield class cannot be inherited, see in this case, this shield class cannot be inherited to class 2, right? But still we can consume the shield class member from outside the class by creating an instance of this class. So you can create an instance of this class and you can call the member of this class from outside the class, right? That is the way we can consume a shield class member. Now let us understand this shield class with one example. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just copying the code and I'm just copy pasting it here, right? So if you look at this example, so here I'm creating few classes, right? So this is my employee class. In this employee class, I have declared four protected data member: ID, age, name, and address. To capture the employee ID, age, name, and address, I'm creating four protected member. And if you look, so I'm declaring this method as virtual. So once I make this method as virtual means what? Means the employee class giving permission to the child classes. If any child class want, they can override this method. So while overriding the method, we need to use the override modifier, right? And what this method inside this employee class doing, it is just taking the employee information and storing the employee information from this into this four variables. So it will ask the user, hey user, please enter the employee ID, please enter the employee name, please enter the employee address, please enter the employee age, and whatever information the user entered, those entered information are going to be stored inside these four variables. Then whatever information we stored in these four variables, that we are going to display it on the console when this method is being called. And again, if you remember, we mark this method as virtual also, which means this method also going to be override inside the child classes. Now let's create a child class of this class. So I'm creating one class called a manager, and if you remember, I'm making this manager class inherited from the employee class. As this employee class is not marked as shield, so we can make this inheritance relationship, right? And inside this manager class, I'm declaring two private data member. One is bonus to store the manager bonus, and another variable called salary to store the manager salary, right? As you can see in the parent class, we are making this two method as virtual, so we can override those two method under the child classes. So what I'm doing here, I'm overriding this get employee method, right? And I'm implementing this method as per my child class requirement. So in parent class, if you look at the definition, it is taking information like name, ID, address, and age. But for manager, my requirement is that I don't need that address and age information. What I need for my manager class, I only need ID, name, salary, and bonus. So this salary and bonus I declared here additional, right? And what as per my business requirement, I'm taking the data from the user when the user call this method, right? And whatever information I'm storing, right, those information I'm going to print on this method. And further, if you remember, we are marking this method as override. Why we marking this method as override? That means this is a re-implementation. What do we mean by re-implementation? Because re-implementation means this method is already implemented inside the parent class, and we are re-implementing this method. As we are re-implementing this method by taking the permission from this employee class, then we need to use this override modifier. How employee giving you permission means employee declared this method as virtual. When the employee class, when the parent class makes any method as virtual, means that method can be override under the child classes by using the override modifier. That is what we have discussed already in our method overriding concept, right? Now further, if you look at this manager class, we are marking this class as shield. And once we marked this class as a shield means no further inheritance. Now, no class can inherit this manager class. Now, if you try, then you will get a compilation error saying that you cannot inherit this because this class is a sealed, right? Now you can see I'm trying to create another class called temp manager by inheriting from the manager class. But as soon as I make this inheritance, I'm getting one compilation error. The error is not in the manager class. The error is inside the temp manager class. What error it is saying? It is saying temp manager. I mean this class or this type cannot derive from sealed type manager. This manager class, what you are trying to derive, right? So that class is already marked as a sealed, so you cannot create a derived class from that class. This is what this error message is saying. That means once you mark the class as a sealed, then no more inheritance is possible. That is the use of a sealed class in C#. Now what I'm doing, I'm just creating one instance of a manager class and I'm calling the two a method that is get employee data and display employee data. So as we are creating an instance of a manager class, then when we call this method, then the overloaded versions, right? The method which are overriding in the manager class, those two versions are going to be executed. So it will ask for the manager ID. Let me enter the ID. Let me enter the name. Then it is asking for the salary. Please enter any value, enter the bonus. I'm entering the bonus. So whatever information I am entering, I'm getting all those information, right? Why it is asking for ID, name, salary and bonus? Why it is not asking address and age? Because this overloaded version, right, is going to be executed from the manager class, not from the employee class. Why from the manager class? Because we are creating an instance of the manager class. So this is how you can implement sealed class in C#. Now, we understand sealed class. Sealed class means inheritance cannot be possible. Once you mark the class as sealed, then no more class can inherit from the sealed class. Now, once you understand sealed class, then we need to understand sealed method. What are sealed method? When to use sealed method? How to create a sealed method? What is the advantages of using sealed method? What are the things we can do with sealed method? What are the things we cannot do with sealed method? Let us try to understand. See, the method that is defined in a parent class, if that method cannot be overridden under a child class, we call it as a sealed method. Suppose you declared one method in the parent class, if the child class unable to override that method, then we can say that that method what you declared in the parent class is a sealed. And guys, remember, by default, whenever you create a method inside any class, right? If you are not using the virtual keyword or if you are not using that abstract or override keyword, then that method by default is going to be sealed only. That means by default, every method is a sealed method because overriding is not possible unless the method is not declared as virtual or abstract or override in the parent class. If a method is declared as virtual in a class, then any child class of it can have the right to override that. For example, let's see in this case. Okay, let me copy the code. Okay, so in this case, you can see this is my parent class, this is my child class, and this is another child class. So you can say this is the grandchild class. So in this case, inside the parent class, we declare this method as virtual. So whenever you see a method as virtual, right, then the child class can override the method. So in this case, the child class overriding this virtual method by using the override keyword. And this grandchild class, as this method is declared as either virtual or override, then you can override that method inside the grandchild class. So in this case, you can see the grandchild class also overriding that method. That means why it is possible, because this method is declared as virtual here, you can override. This method is declared override here, then again you can override under the child classes. That is also possible in C#. Now what is our requirement? Our requirement is, yes, I declare this method as virtual. So the immediate child of this class, the immediate child of this parent class should override the parent class, should override that method. So who is the immediate parent class of this class? Parent, this child class is nothing but the immediate child. So in this case, he can override the method. But our requirement is that no other child classes should, or the grandchild classes should not override this method. But in this case, as you can see, as we declare this method as override, right? So that method can be override under the child classes. If you want to restrict that this method should not be override under this grandchild class, then you need to use the keyword shield along with the override, right? So as soon as I make this class as shield, you will see that this method cannot be override. Why? Because this is a shield method. Shield method means along with override keyword, you have to write shield method, right? And once you write the shield keyword, that means this method is shield, this method is final, this method is fixed. You cannot provide a different implementation for this method under the child classes. And if you try, then you will get a compilation error. What error? Let's see. Grandchild.show cannot override inherited member child.show because it is shield. As you marked this method as shield, then no further no child class can override that method. And one more thing, as I told you, by default, whenever you declared a method as shield, so let me prove this. Suppose here I'm not using this virtual keyword and I'm providing the method name as a display. So in this case, if you try to re-implement this method under the child class, then you will get some kind of error. What error you will get? Right? Let me overwrite this. Okay, so in this case, you will see that here I'm not marking this method as a virtual or abstract or override. And if the method is not marked as a virtual, abstract or override, then you cannot override that method under the child classes. If you try, you will get error. What error? The same error. Child.display method cannot override inherited member, that is parent.display, because it is not marked virtual, abstract and override. As this method is not marked as virtual, abstract or override, so you cannot use this override modifier to re-implement or implement the method. This is the point that you need to remember. Now, so the point that you need to remember is every method by default is shield, right? In this case, as I'm not marking this method as shield, then by default this method is going to be shield, right? Hence, they cannot be overridden under the child class. As this method by default is shield, so you cannot override that method under the child classes. The first point is clear. But if you declare a method as virtual, then that method can be overridden under the child class. See, in this case, you make this method as virtual. As you make this method as virtual, then under the child classes, you can override that method, right? As well as under the grandchild classes also, right? So in this case, if you are not using this shield modifier, then also you can override that method under the grandchild class. So why grandchild overriding this method? Because in the parent class, so who is the parent class of this child class? In the child class, the method is declared as override. And as per the rule, whenever a method is declared using the abstract keyword or using the virtual keyword or using the override keyword, then you can override that method under the child classes. This is the point that you need to remember, right? If you want to restrict the method not to be overridden under the grandchild class, right, then you need to mark the method as shield inside the child class. Now, if you don't want that method, if you don't want this show method which you re-implement under the child class not to be overridden, not to be override inside the grandchild class, then you need to mark this method as shield. So once you mark this method as shield, then the child class cannot override it. This is the point that you need to remember, right? So the point that you need to remember is if you want to declare a method as shield, then it has to be declared as virtual in the base class. See, in this case, I'm marking this method as shield. Why it is possible to marking this method as shield? Because this method is declared virtual in the base class. If this method is not declared virtual, then you cannot use this shield. For example, here you can see I'm writing this method void public void display. In this case, even if you try to make this method as shield, then also you will get error, right? So this is not possible, right? Because this method is not declared as virtual, and even you cannot directly declare this method shield like this. Why it is not possible to directly declare? Because by default this member is a shield now. As this method is by default shield, then how you can declare the method as a shield explicitly again? Not possible. But why it is possible to use the shield keyword here? Because in the parent class we declare this method as virtual. This is not a shield method. As in the parent class, you declare this method as virtual. Now in the child class, you want to make that method as shield. then you need to use the shield keyword. And you can only use the shield keyword when the parent class is a virtual method, when the method in the parent class is a virtual method. That is the thing that you need to remember. Now let us understand the shield class and the shield method one real-time example. See, understanding the concept is fine. We understand what is shield class, we understand what is shield method, but until and unless we are not utilizing those concepts in our real-time application, then what is the meaning of understanding the concept, right? If you are not utilizing properly the concept, then it doesn't matter how strong you are into the concept. It doesn't matter if you are not utilizing those concepts in your real-time application, right? See, this is my parent class. I'm creating one class, I'm creating another class, I'm creating another class, right? So this is my program class. So basically I'm creating three classes, and this is going to be my parent class. From this class, this LedgerGen printer class is created. From LedgerGen, I'm creating this inkjet. So this is my parent, this is my child, and you can consider this is my grandchild, right? Now if you look at this method, so here I'm declaring two virtual methods. So you can see this display is the virtual implementation virtual method, and this print is also a virtual method, right? So as printer class mark these two methods as virtual, then the child class of this printer class, right, can re-implement these two methods as per their own business requirement. So what requirement? So what we are doing here, we are just displaying that the dimension is 5 into 5, and with 5 into 5 dimension, this print functionality is going to work. So it is going to printer is going to printing the data inside a 5 into 5 dimension, right? So this is the implementation of printer class. Now later LedgerGen printer class doesn't want this implementation. He doesn't interested into 5 into 5 I mean 5 into 5 dimension. He want 10 into 10 dimension, right? So what he can do is he can override this method, right? So he can override this method. You can see this display method is overridden, right? So and he re-implement this method with the dimension 10 into 10, right? But after re-implementing this method, right, so with 10 into 10, now the LedgerJet printer wants what? Now he wants, if any class derived from me, then he should use the same dimension what I am providing here. He should not override this method, and he should not provide a different dimension. He mandatory, he should use what dimension I'm providing. That means what? That means we should hide, we should not provide the flexibility to override this method under the child class of this LedgerJet. And if you want to restrict overriding under the child classes, right, then what is the option? The option is we need to mark this method as shield. So you can see here I'm making this method as shield, and once I mark this method as shield, means this method can be consumed by the child class of this LedgerJet class, but that child class cannot provide another implementation for this display method. Means overriding is not possible. Now come to the second method, and you can see this is a virtual method, print is a virtual method. So here it is re-implementing the print, right? So it is giving that message that LedgerJet printer is printing the message, right? This is fine. Now I'm creating inkjet class, and if you remember, if this inkjet class is inherited from the LedgerJet class, and the LedgerJet class is not a shield class. Not a shield class means this inheritance is possible. But what is not possible? Re-implementing this method under this class is not possible. Why it is not possible? Because this class is marked as shield. And if you try to re-implement this method, then you will get a compilation error. What error you will get? You will get one error that inkjet.display cannot override inherited member LedgerJet.display because it is shield. Inside the parent class, inside this LedgerJet class, this method is declared as shield. As this method is declared as shield, you cannot override this method, right? But the print method you can override. Why? Because this print method is declared using either abstract, virtual, or override. Any keyword is used in the parent class. Yes, virtual keyword is used. You can override the method inside the child class, and we are just giving this message that inkjet printer is printing, right? So in this case, what the important point that you need to remember, if you want to make sure that this method is going to be used by the child classes, and if you want to make sure that this method should not be overridden by the child classes, then you need to mark this as this method as shield, and that is what we are doing here. And now if you create an instance of this class, or if you create an instance of this class, and if you invoke the display method, then this version of display method is going to be executed, right? And one more thing, and here what we are doing, now we are marking this class as shield. So as we marked this class as a shield, what it means, no further inheritance, right? No new class can derive from this ingent class, and if any new class trying to derive from this ingent class, then that class will get one error that the ingent class is a shield class. So you can see dot matrix cannot derive from the shield type ingent. So this inheritance is not possible. Why this inheritance is not possible? Because we mark the parent class as shield. We mark this ingent class means this class cannot become a base class. This class cannot become a parent class. And why this overriding is not possible? Because in the parent class, we mark this method as shield. So the point that you need to remember, if you make a class as shield means no further inheritance. And if you make, or if you mark a method as shield means you cannot derive that method under the child classes, right? So this is the point that you need to remember. Now, if you come to the printer class, then you can create an instance and call the display and print method. LaserJet, you can create an instance, call and print method, right? And Inkjet, you can create an instance and you can call the display and print method as per your requirement. So whichever printer you want, you can create an instance and you can consume the display and print method like this. So now the printer class, it is using the dimension 5 into 5, and LaserJet, it is using the dimension 10 into 10, and the Inkjet, it is also using the same dimension what is set by the LaserJet printer. And this is possible because of the shield class and shield methods. Right now, I hope you understand this concept. Now, in inheritance, the shield class is the bottommost class because from this class, no more inheritance is possible, right? Now, let us discuss few interview questions, because if you are attending any interview, then you might face this question. When should a method be declared as shield in CSharp? If we do not allow subclasses to override the superclass method and to ensure that all subclasses use the same superclass method logic, then that method should be declared as shield. So in this case, you can see here we are marking this method as shield, means all the subclasses now going to use the same superclass or going to use this display method only, right? The shield method cannot be overridden in the subclasses. Violation leads to error. Now, if you try to override that shield method, and if then you will get one compilation error, because violation means you cannot override a shield method under the child classes. The compiler will give you one compile time error. Now, it is one of the most important questions, right? What is the difference between private and shield method in C#? The private method is not inherited, whereas shield method is inherited. So this point is very important. The private method is not inherited, but the shield method is inherited, but cannot be overridden, right? But cannot be overridden. What it means? It means if you are making a private method, then that private method is not going to be inherited to the child class, right? But if you are making a shield method, then that method inherited to the child class, but inside the child class, you cannot override that method, right? So what it means if you are creating a private method, then you cannot call that method by using the child class object, but you can call the subclass method, right? But you can call the shield method using the same, or you can say using the child class instance, right? The same private method can be defined in subclass and it doesn't lead to any compile time error, right? To understand this concept, let me copy this code to my Visual Studio. Right, see, in this case, I'm making this class 1 as the parent class, and I'm making one method as virtual. So this is my parent class, and inside this method class, method 1 is there, and which is a virtual method. In class 2, what I'm trying to do is I'm creating one private method. So this is my private method, method 2, and I'm making overriding this virtual method under the child class. But after overriding, I'm marking this class method as shield. That means what? That means now class 2 contain two methods, one private method and one shield method, right? And as per our logic and as per our understanding, as this class is not marked as shield, so you can inherit class 3 from class 2. You can make inheritance relationship. But when you mark the inheritance relationship, this private method, what you defined in class 2, is not inherited to the child class. Right? Inside this child class, this method is not available. But this method is inherited to the child class, but you cannot override that method, right? So you can see you cannot override method 1 here because method 1 is marked as shield, so you cannot override this method, but you can consume this method using the child class instance. So this method 1 you can consume by using an instance of this class, but by using the child class instance you cannot consume this method because this method is not this method is not inherited the child class. As this method is not available in child class, so in child class you can create a new method with the same name and same signature, right? So what is the method name and what number of parameters this method is taking? With the same name and same number of parameter, you can also create a method under the child class. This is possible because in this case, this class 3 doesn't know about this method, right? Because this method 2 is not inherited to class 3. Na? If it is not inherited to class 3 means what? It means class 3 doesn't know is there any method available with this signature in the parent class. As it is not, as this method is inaccessible or not available, so the child class can create its own version of the same method. This is possible. Now come to this part. So here what I'm trying to do is I'm creating an instance of a class 2. So class 2 means this is the instance. By using the class 2 instance, I can only invoke this method, but I cannot invoke this method. Why? Because this method is private. So here you cannot invoke that method. And using class 3, I can invoke method 1 and I can invoke method 2 because in class 3, right, this is method 2 I can invoke, and this is shield method which is also inherited to class 3, right? As you can see, I can invoke method 1 which is a shield method, right? That is inherited to class 3. Shield method is inherited to class 3, but private method is never inherited to the child classes. That is the point that you need to remember, right? So if you are creating an instance, then you can consume the child you can consume the shield method of the parent class, but you cannot consume the private method of the parent class. That is the point that you need to remember, right? When should a class be declared as shield? If you want to restrict inheritance, then you need to declare the class as shield by using the shield modifier or keyword. What are the difference between abstract classes and shield classes in C#? Let us see the differences. First, let us understand what are abstract classes. A class that contains one or more abstract method is known as abstract class. It is not mandatory that inside an abstract class you need to declare only abstract method. If your class doesn't contain any abstract method, then also you can declare the class as abstract. But at least if your class contain at least one abstract method, then it becomes mandatory to make the class as abstract. The abstract class contain abstract and non-abstract methods. We have already discussed that you have abstract and non-abstract members inside an abstract class. If you want to consume the non-abstract member, right, then first of all your child class has to implement the abstract member, right? That means the non-abstract member are under restrictions. What restriction? Then the child class first of all has to implement the abstract member. Then only the child class can consume the non-abstract member. Creating a new class from an abstract class is compulsorily to consume, right? So as we know, we cannot create an instance of the abstract class. Then how we can? Then how we are going to consume the abstract class member? Only through the child class instance. That means it is mandatory to create a derived class of the abstract class, and by using that derived class or child class object, we can only consume the abstract class member. An abstract class cannot be instantiated directly, right? We cannot create an instance of the of an abstract class. What we need? We need to create an instance of the child class, and using that child class instance only, we can consume the non-abstract member of the abstract class. We need to use the abstract keyword to make any class as abstract. An abstract class cannot be the bottommost class within the inheritance hierarchy, right? So why it is not going to the bottommost? Because we cannot create an instance. Now, if it is going to the bottommost, means we should able to create an instance. But where, as per our discussion, as per the rule and regulation of abstract class, you cannot create an instance. And whichever class you do not have permission to create an instance, that class can never become or can never be the bottommost class in the inheritance hierarchy. Right, now come to the second, the shield class. A class from which it is not possible to derive a new class is known as shield class. Right, once you make the class as a shield, that means no further inheritance is possible. No new derived class can create from the shield class. The shield class can contain non-abstract members only. Right, no abstract member in the shield class. Why? Because this is the bottommost class. Now you are going to create an instance, you are going to consume the member, right? Then if it allows you abstract members, then how you can consume those members, right? This is the reason why it is not allowing to declare any kind of abstract or virtual method. It is not possible to create a new class from a shield class, right? So this is what is the main objective of shield class, means no further inheritance, no further new derived classes going to be created from the shield class. We should create an object for a shield class to consume it. So yes, absolutely right. If you want to consume the member of the shield class, then you need to create an instance and you need to call the members. We need to use the shield keyword to mark any class as shield. If you want to make any class as shield, then you need to mark that class by using the shield modifier, right? Suppose you want to make this class as shield, then you need to use this shield keyword. Once you make this class as shield, then it will become a shield class and no further inheritance is possible. And the final one, the shield class would be the bottommost class within the inheritance hierarchy, right? So if you are going with the inheritance hierarchy, then first the interface is going to be there, then abstract classes is going to be there, then the non-abstract classes is going to be there, and finally the shield class is going into the picture, right? So I hope now you understand what is the difference between abstract classes and shield classes in C#. That's it for today. In case you need the text version of this video, right, I mean whatever the document I'm showing in the presentation, in case you need, then the link for the same is provided in the video description section. Just click on that link, go to my website, which is .NET tutorial, and from there you will get the documents. Thank you for watching this video.